of the Constitution, Right of Housing Bill 2019. First stage, calling Deputy Broughan to move for leave to introduce the bill.
Thanks, Lascan, and thanks for the opportunity. Sorry.
You're calling for leave to introduce the bill?
Yeah, I want for leave.
Right. 5 minutes at the most.
Thanks, Can. I'm asking leave to introduce the 39th Amendment to the Constitution, the Right to Housing Bill 2019, which seeks to amend Article 45 of the Constitution, the directive principles of social policy. The purpose of this bill, Lascan, is to begin the process to allow for a referendum to be held for the electorate to decide on the insertion of a right to housing into Article 45 of Broughan TD. The wording put forward in the bill reads, and I quote, "The State recognises the common good as including the right to adequate and appropriate housing and shall guarantee that right through its laws, policies and the prioritisation of resources, with particular regard to children." Article 45, of course, of Broughan TD sets out the directive principles of social policy and states, and I quote, "The principles of social policy set forth in this article are intended for the general guidance of the Oireachtas. The application of those principles in the making of laws shall be in the care of the Oireachtas exclusively and shall not be cognizable by any court under any of the provisions of the Constitution." End quote. The genesis of this bill comes from long-standing deep concerns, of course, over the housing crisis, and in particular the rising number of children experiencing homelessness, especially in 2014-15. In 2011, the CSO, of course, stated there were 641 children homeless. This figure, of course, increased then by around 500%, up to almost 4,000 just in April last. And without excluding other cohorts of people, of course, experiencing homelessness, the bill explicitly states there must be particular regard to children, given the longer-term impacts of homelessness on children. Because of the grave concerns I had, in the summer of 2015, I met with and my office met with the Ombudsman for Children, Mr Niall Muldoon. I met representatives of the Children's Rights Alliance, having contacted both in April, voicing the concerns about the impact on the housing crisis, particularly on children. And as children, of course, we would meet ministers week in, week out at our information meetings in the constituency. At that time in 2015, there were 911 children being held in emergency accommodation, which during the week of course, 22nd to 28th of April last, 4 years later, that number had risen to an appalling figure, as you know, last count, of 3,794. Of course, in the intervening years and months, I've asked countless questions to Ministers Coveney, Minister Murphy, Minister Sapone. I've also raised the matter, of course, several times with Taoiseach here, back here with us now. Many topical issues matters also I've raised about it, and of course a motion with myself and my independent colleagues which we put forward on homelessness this February was passed by Dáil Éireann by 71 votes to 43. Some may question, of course, Taoiseach, why we should seek to amend Article 45, which isn't cognizant in a court of law. However, when we started the process of placing a right to housing in the Constitution, we originally looked at amending Article 42A, the Children's Amendment, and having a referendum on the right to housing just for children. When we met with advocacy group, they felt that while our idea was well-intentioned, it could overshadow other forms of homelessness. So we then examined the possibility of amending Article 41 regarding the family, but that also might have excluded people experiencing homelessness without children. So we believe Article 45, an amendment of Article 45, fits well because it is the directive principle of social policy. Now, you've said yourself, Taoiseach, and Fine Gael has said repeatedly that no constitutional change is needed, and the government is doing everything, of course, within its legislative power to provide funding and increase supply. But yet we still have a very dysfunctional housing market. I think everybody agrees, very, very far from equilibrium in that market. And I think putting the responsibility on the Oireachtas through amending the directives of social policy, and with particular regard to children, would be very valuable. In mid-May, of course, we debated, and I strongly supported our colleagues in Sinn Féin on the right to housing bill, the private members' bill. It sought to amend Article 43, the private property article, and a certain new Section 43, which stated, and I quote, "The State recognises the right of all citizens to adequate, appropriate, secure, safe and affordable housing." But of course, despite Fianna Fáil saying they now believe a right to housing is a necessity, they also, along with you and Fine Gael, refused to support the Sinn Féin bill. And of course, other previous attempts of bringing forward a right to housing have also failed. Now, I noticed in the debate on Sinn Féin bill, Taoiseach, your colleague Deputy Stanton, said that Fine Gael was open to bringing forward the consideration of a right to housing, and I've given you the opportunity now, hopefully, under the social principles, that you would consider at least doing that. Earlier this month, we had a study from the Royal Holloway University of London, headed by Dr Mel Lewicki, and it was commissioned by DCC, Dublin City Council. The study was of 16 formerly homeless families on the impact of the experience of homelessness on the children of those families. The findings, Taoiseach, are totally shameful for every member of this House, but particularly for government deputies and for yourself. And they weren't unexpected, and findings included halted development of speech, children unable to crawl, problems with nutrition, etc. All the problems of living in a crowded hotel room or in a so-called family hub. And at the recent INTO, the National Teachers Lobby, which we all attended, of course, we met teachers from areas there's a significant number of homeless children in their classes, but little or no extra support is offered to the families, teachers or children. So, based on the experience of my own office, in conclusion, the lives of my constituents, particularly those who are suffering in homelessness, the well-being of those almost 4,000 children, I believe the time is now right, the time is here to put a right of housing into the Constitution.
Thank you.
Thanks, Can.